Jane had long grown used to being invisible in her faculty, though sometimes invisibility was a blessing. While other girls in her class strutted around in expensive heels, wore the latest designer outfits, and posted daily selfies with flawless makeup, she kept her head down. Her clothes were always clean and neatly pressed, but never trendy. Her hair was usually braided in simple styles she could maintain herself, and her phone was a battered old Android that barely held a charge. To many of her female course mates, this made her the perfect target. They would whisper about her when she walked by, laugh when she wore the same skirt twice in one week, and exchange knowing looks whenever she raised her hand in class. Jane had learned to ignore them, but sometimes their words still stung. She focused on her studies, telling herself that not everyone needed to be a slay queen to have worth. One afternoon, she sat in the faculty courtyard eating rice from a nylon-wrapped takeaway pack when she overheard a group of girls nearby. "The faculty pageantry is next month," one of them gushed, "and Raymond will be the guest of honor." Jane knew exactly who they meant. Raymond was the governor's first son, an alumnus of their faculty, and one of the most talked-about figures in the state. She had seen his pictures on the university's website before. Tall, impeccably dressed, and always smiling for the camera, he was the kind of man who seemed worlds apart from someone like her. "I am definitely participating," one of them gushed, "and Raymond will be the guest of honor." Jane knew exactly who they meant. Raymond was the governor's first son, an alumnus of their faculty, and one of the most talked-about figures in the state. She had seen his pictures on the university's website before. Tall, impeccably dressed, and always smiling for the camera, he was the kind of man who seemed worlds apart from someone like her. "I am definitely participating," another girl said, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Imagine if he notices me." They laughed and began talking about outfits, makeup artists, and which designers they would approach. Jane ate quietly, thinking how impossible it was for her to even dream about entering. She had no fancy gowns, no money for professional makeup, and certainly no experience walking a runway. Besides, she had no interest in being laughed at on a bigger stage. That evening, she told her best friend Lucy about the conversation. Lucy was sitting on the bed in their small hostel room, her eyes bright with curiosity. "So you are just going to let them have it all to themselves?" Lucy asked, raising an eyebrow. Jane gave a small laugh. "You know me. I have no business being in a beauty pageant." "That's exactly why you should try," Lucy said firmly. "They think you are timid. They think you cannot stand where they stand. Prove them wrong." Jane shook her head. "I don't even have clothes for that kind of thing. And you know those girls will just mock me even more." "Let them mock," Lucy replied, leaning forward. "This is not about beating them at their own game. It's about showing them you are not afraid. I will help you prepare. We can make something work." Jane stared at her friend. She had never seen Lucy so serious about anything unrelated to exams. "You are talking as if I actually have a chance to win." Lucy grinned. "You never know. Life surprises people. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? You try, you lose, and you go back to living your life. At least you'll know you tried." The idea stayed in Jane's mind that night. She lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what it would be like to stand on a stage. She imagined the bright lights, the sound of applause, and the chance to prove to herself that she could do something completely out of her comfort zone. By the next morning, her decision was made. She found Lucy in the campus cafeteria and quietly told her, "I will do it." Lucy nearly jumped from her seat. "Yes, we will start practicing this evening. I have so many ideas." Jane smiled, though nerves were already stirring in her stomach. Somewhere deep inside, she still wondered if she was making a mistake. But, for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of excitement. Maybe, just maybe, Lucy was right. From the moment Jane agreed to participate, Lucy took control like a coach preparing her athlete for a championship. Every evening after classes, they would head to an open space behind the hostel where Jane practiced walking in a straight line, her chin slightly raised, shoulders back, and steps steady. At first, she felt ridiculous. The heels she borrowed from Lucy wobbled under her feet, and she nearly tripped more than once. But Lucy was patient, clapping and cheering every time Jane completed a round without stumbling. At first, she felt ridiculous. The heels she borrowed from Lucy wobbled under her feet, and she nearly tripped more than once. But Lucy was patient, clapping and cheering every time Jane completed a round without stumbling. During the day, Jane used the school's Wi-Fi to browse YouTube for runway videos. Her old Android phone struggled to load them, often freezing midway, but she would refresh and keep going. She studied how models posed, how they smiled subtly without looking forced, and how they held themselves with confidence. Each evening, she tried to copy what she had seen, sometimes failing, sometimes getting it just right. The hardest part for her was the question and answer segment. Lucy would randomly throw questions at her. What would you change in your community if given the chance? Or, who inspires you and why? Jane would stammer at first, her mind going blank under the imaginary pressure of an audience. But with practice, she learned to take a breath, gather her thoughts, and speak slowly. The week of the pageant arrived quickly. Other contestants posted pictures of their expensive outfits on social media, flaunting the designers who would be dressing them. Jane, on the other hand, had no designer backing. She borrowed a neatly tailored gown from a friend in another faculty. It was not flashy, but it was elegant. She ironed it the night before the event until not a wrinkle was in sight. On the day of the pageant, the campus auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Students filled the seats, talking and laughing as they waited for the show to start. Bright lights hung over the stage, and the sound of upbeat music echoed through the hall. Backstage, Jane stood among the other contestants, her palms sweating as she glanced at their sparkling gowns and flawless makeup. Her own makeup had been done by Lucy, using a small kit, nothing professional, but it made her look fresh and put together. When her turn came for the runway walk, her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear the music. She stepped onto the stage, remembering Lucy's instructions. One foot in front of the other, keep the chin up, do not rush. She walked steadily, her gown swaying gently with each step. The applause was polite, but Jane could feel certain eyes on her from the front row. She dared a quick glance and saw him, Raymond, seated beside faculty staff, watching intently. The talent and question and answer segments followed. Jane's question was about what she believed was the most important quality of a leader. For a moment, her mind went blank. She could almost hear the mocking voices of her coursemates in the audience. But then she remembered her practice sessions with Lucy. She took a slow breath and answered, integrity, because a leader without it cannot earn the trust of the people. Her voice wavered slightly, but her words were clear. When the final results were being announced, Jane kept telling herself she would be happy just to have tried. The host called the second runner-up, then the first runner-up, and finally paused dramatically before announcing the winner. Jane almost missed her name when it was said. She stood frozen for a second until Lucy's loud cheer snapped her out of it. The crowd erupted into applause, and Jane walked forward, stunned. As she reached the center of the stage, Raymond himself stood up and came forward to present her with the crown. He shook her hand warmly and smiled as if he had been expecting her to win all along. In that moment, all the whispered insults, the laughter behind her back, and the doubts she had carried for weeks seemed to vanish. She had done it. And from the way Raymond was still looking at her, she had a feeling the night's surprises were far from over. The applause was still echoing when Jane stepped down from the stage, her crown slightly tilted and her heart racing. Lucy rushed to meet her backstage, throwing her arms around her. "You did it, Jane! You actually did it!" Jane laughed, still trying to process everything. "I can't believe it! I thought they would never call my name!" Before she could catch her breath, a faculty official approached. "Jane, Raymond would like to speak with you." Her heart skipped. She followed the official to the main lobby of the auditorium, where Raymond stood with a small group of aides. Up close, he seemed taller than she had imagined, his smile warm and genuine. "Congratulations, Jane," he said, his voice smooth. "You were remarkable out there. You carried yourself with a quiet confidence that I find rare." Jane felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you, sir. I really did not expect to win." "That is often how the best victories come," he replied. Then he gestured to one of his aides, who stepped forward carrying a small box. Inside were keys. "I have a gift for you. A brand new car is waiting outside. And this," he added, handing her a sleek smartphone, "to replace that old device you have been struggling with." Jane gasped. The auditorium buzzed with murmurs as people realized what was happening. Her course mates, who had once mocked her, now stood wide-eyed, their expressions a mix of shock and envy. Raymond smiled again. "There is more. I will personally take you on a tour to Dubai. You deserve to see the world, Jane." She stared at him, momentarily speechless. I don't know what to say." "Just say yes," he said lightly. "You earned it." Lucy's eyes were already glistening with pride as she watched from a few steps away. Jane nodded slowly. "Yes, thank you so much." Over the next few days, the news spread across the campus like wildfire. Jane, the quiet girl no one expected to shine, had not only won the pageants but had also captured the attention of the governor's son. Social media was flooded with pictures of her on stage, the crown glittering on her head. Messages poured in from people who had never spoken to her before. At first, Jane felt as though she were walking through a dream. Her new phone worked perfectly, the car gleamed under the sun, and Lucy kept reminding her that she had earned every bit of it. But deep down, she still clung to the humility that had carried her this far. One afternoon, about a month later, she was sitting under a tree near the faculty building reading when she noticed Lucy walking toward her with a strange expression. "What's wrong?" Jane asked. Lucy sat down beside her. "I just heard something you need to know. It's about Raymond." Jane frowned. "What about him?" Lucy hesitated. "I don't want to alarm you, but let's just say not all the attention you're getting is for the reason you think." Jane's book slid from her hands. "Lucy, you're scaring me. What happened?" Lucy looked around before lowering her voice. "I overheard two of his aides talking outside the administrative block. They mentioned your name, and from what they were saying, it sounds like—" She trailed off, clearly torn about whether to continue. Jane's chest tightened. "It sounds like what?" Lucy shook her head. "I'm not sure, but it did not sound like it was all good." The laughter and applause of that night flashed in Jane's mind, but now it was tinged with an unease she could not explain. She suddenly realized that her story might not be ending with the crown and the car after all. Something was coming, and she was no longer certain it would be something she wanted.